I personally have studied the currency market since 1987. And I've been in these markets on some level since 1964. But since 87, what you see are repeatable patterns. We've been through inflation, we've been through deflation. We haven't been through hyperinflation yet. That is happening. Potentially that's already started. I mean, again, I don't have technical confirmation, but it's what it feels like to me. So we need to get going. You can't be waiting anymore. We've seen a huge outflow of the smart money and the stock markets. You know, Elon Musk, Facebook, it's not Facebook anymore, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, just to mention two that have sold billions and billions of dollars. I think it's something like, don't hold me to this, but like $170 billion worth of insider selling in 2021. You think they might know something you don't? Because I think they do. The smart money is accumulating. And so when I see that leveling off, and we can go back to 2016, and you'll hear me talk about this, do I know exactly when the very bottom is? Of course I don't. But I think you can see that pattern. And that's when I'm going to start accumulating, when I see that formation happening, because it's building a very strong base. And all I'm really looking to do in any asset is get in somewhere near a bottom, right? That tells me, that cup formation tells me that we are somewhere near a bottom. And I don't care what asset it is. When it is time, when we see that accumulation pattern, that's when you're going to start moving into that asset. With gold, because now you could say, well, we already had the cup and it's 1800 and maybe I shouldn't be buying it now. Except that what we know, when I take that cup formation and then I put it with the true fundamental value, so that's a calculation, right? That helps you understand when that trend is done, right? But as long as I see that it is severely undervalued, which I know absolutely for a fact, 100 bazillion %, both gold and silver are severely undervalued because of what's happening in the monetary system. Gold and silver are universally accepted and used across the every single area of the global economy. I think it is important for every single person, not just Canadians, but for Chinese and for Europeans and Americans, and every single person on the planet really needs to become their own central bank and make sure that they can hold their value, their purchasing power value intact. So, everybody needs to own it, especially, the Canadian government. They don't have any gold. And whoever holds the gold, as we go through and finish going through this currency life cycle, the end of its life cycle, well, guess what? They're not going to have as high a sway in the global economy as those central banks and those governments that have gold behind them. That's why China and Russia and India and a lot of other central banks have been accumulating as much gold as they can get their hands on. Yeah, I think it's critical for every single person to have some physical gold that is decentralized wealth outside of the system and invisible, as the central banks and the governments are trying to get everything intangible. That is so much easier to steal. It is so much easier to see. It is so much easier for them, but it puts you in a vulnerable position. 2022, this year, is a very pivotal year because the Fed has to raise interest rates to fight inflation, right? So has to create deflation to fight inflation. But when those markets start to implode, the stock markets, the bond markets, the real estate markets, etc., when those prices start to drop, Well, that's deflationary, and there's only one way to fight that, and that's with inflation. That's what the 0% interest rates are. That's inflationary. The easy money policy, the buying up of the treasuries of the, well, heck, in 2020, they were buying everything, junk bonds, everything, right? The buying up of those assets and all this new money printing, that's inflationary. So, and that's to fight deflation. And that's the deflation is really the battle that the central banks have been up against forever. And their job, make no mistake about this, when they talk about fighting inflation, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. Their job has always been to regulate the rate and speed of the inflation, right? Not fight it. They just want it low enough so that you don't notice. And the problem is when they're anchored at zero interest rates, that's their key tool, and they're out of tools. That's why I keep saying the Fed is out of tools. And I think it's really interesting that they say, well, we have these very powerful tools, but they never really tell us what they are, do they? Because all they can do is create new money and keep interest rates at zero. They're between a rock and a hard place, and all that's going to get tested this year. A rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And once you get that the fiat currency, the dollar, the euro, the yen, any of them are failing, then you make different choices because you understand that they are going away in terms of value. So, frankly, no, I cannot see any set of circumstances where gold and silver don't go much, much higher, because that is how the reset is actually performed. Those overnight resets is paper fiat with no intrinsic value against gold and silver, which are, well, it's really gold is how they reset it, but silver is a secondary monetary metal. So that's what they do. They have to revalue something that has no intrinsic value against something that is all intrinsic value and has been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Cash, I mean, the problem with cash is it's all about purchasing power, but it is the most recognizable to most people on a short-term basis. So you need to hold some cash, but as inflation continues to heat up, that cash loses more and more and more purchasing power value. It's part of the problem.